Anyway, things started to get serious when Marco came to him and said, we need to have a chat. Oh no, Marco's calling him. What could this be about? And he says that he was a little bit nervous because just recently he lost his virginity to an older woman out back behind a pub. What? I mean, like we said in the last video, did we not see this coming? This guy's had an obsession with older women since we've met him. And of course it was going to be an older woman. But listen to this sordid description. He says that Marco calls him up and says, mate, we got to meet. And he's panicking because he's like, oh no, somebody saw me. I suspected he was referring to my recent loss of virginity. Inglorious episode with an older woman. She liked horses quite a lot and treated me not unlike a young stallion. Quick ride, after which she'd smacked my rump and sent me off to graze. Among the many things about it that were wrong, it happened in a grassy field behind a busy pub. WTF to this? I mean, you're going to tell me that you, Prince Harry, could have had anybody and you chose to throw it away on an old lady back behind a pub and the grass? I mean, okay, this guy's already made a lot of poor decisions. This is the one that I was like, wow, we really are on the brink of just complete and total mental breakdown. This was how you wanted to do it? In the grass behind a busy pub with a strange old lady? I thought his mom dying was a tragedy. This feels like a bigger tragedy to me. What in the world was this decision? Anyway, so Marco comes to talk to him, but it's not about him rolling around in the grass with an old lady. What it comes down to is that he has been, there's somebody who's about to write a story about him. About his, wild partying and about how he is a big drug addict and how he is, people knew about Club H, how he'd bring his friends down there like all the time. He had like it wasn't just like he and William hiding downstairs. It's like that was where his friends, he brought all his friends. So people knew about it. Anyway, he says that it seemed that the editor of Britain's biggest tabloid had recently phoned my father's office to say she uncovered evidence of my doing drugs in various occasions, including Club H, also a bike shed behind a pub. My father's office immediately dispatched Marco to take a clandestine meeting with one of the editor's lieutenants in some shady hotel room, and the lieutenant laid out the tabloid's case. Now Marco laid it out for me. Well, you were doing drugs, though. You were doing drugs. So why are you acting shocked like, how dare somebody call me out on my drug use? Yeah, I'm using drugs, but so what? It's like, but you are using drugs. Like, you cannot be shocked that people are noticing that you're behaving in ways that are not traditionally the way one would expect a prince to behave. Okay? No one's writing stories about William doing drugs because William's not doing drugs. Anyway, so he's super offended. I'm offended. Anyone would even notice. And so, but this was the part, I mean, already I'm like, I'm shocked that he's indignant. How could you be indignant? They're writing about the truth. Conduct yourself decently and then no one will have anything to say. Imagine that concept. And he says that, he goes on to say, and truly, I'm like marking my book. I write next to this passage, what the hell kind of passage is this? Because he goes to talk about the woman who, the editor of this story. And he says that Marco lays the case before him. Wrong. The basic facts, the details, it was all wrong. I then questioned Marco. Who the hell is this editor? Loathsome toad, I gathered. Everyone who knew her was in full agreement that she was an infected pustule on the arse of humanity, plus a shit excuse for a journalist. But none of that mattered because she'd managed to wriggle her way into a position of great power, and lately she was focusing that power upon me. She was hunting spare, straight out, making no apologies about it. She wouldn't stop till my balls were nailed to her office wall. Could any passage be more dripping with adolescent immaturity? It's like, Harry, I understand the frustration of people saying things about you that are not 100% correct, but let's look at the details. Is any of it correct? Are you doing drugs? Are you behaving in ways that are irresponsible? Are you acting out in ways that are outlandish? I mean, you literally just finished telling me that you were out back behind a pub with an old lady, okay? Those aren't the kind of behaviors one would expect from a young prince. I mean, pardon my old-fashioned ideas about what a prince should look like, but it's not rolling around out back with an old lady. And then he says to Marco, this is just basic teenage stuff, Marco. Why am I getting in trouble for this? And Marco's like, look, it's going to get published, so we've got to deal with this. You're saying that you're not doing drugs? Harry's like, no. Me? Why would anybody think that? I mean, I've only been a beacon of fantastic moral decisions my entire life. How could anybody think that I would ever be up to anything that wasn't great? And so then we get to a section in the story where I'm just like, could my mind be blown anymore? He says that Marco goes back to Pa, tells Pa what happened. They reach out to the editor and they're like, they tell the editor, no, this is true. The editor's like, it is true, and I'm going to run the story anyway. And Harry's like, yeah, but Pa's going to stop her, right? Because, like, she can't do that. That's crazy. And Marco's like, well, actually, it is going to happen because Pa's not going to stop it. And we come to, like, this enormous accusation. Like, I'm talking enormous accusation from Harry. He says, he's like, he can't figure out, like, why won't Pa do something about this? They're telling lies about me. They're not telling the truth. Why won't somebody do something about this? Why won't Pa stand up for me? Why doesn't anybody care about the spare? And he says, did Marco tell me why? Or did I learn only later that the guiding force behind this putrid strategy was the same spin doctor Pa and Camilla had recently hired? The same spin doctor who'd leaked the details of our private summits with Camilla. This spin doctor, Marco said, had decided that the best approach to the case would be to spin me right under the bus. In one swoop, this would appease the editor and also bolster the sagging reputation of Pa. Amid all this unpleasantness, all this extortion and gamemanship, the spin doctor had discovered one silver lining, one shiny consolation prize for Pa. No more the unfaithful husband. Pa would now be presented to the world as the harried single dad, coping with a drug-addled child. This is what he says about his own father. That his dad, in a desperate attempt to regain his soiled reputation, was going to throw his child under the bus so that he could be like, it's not me. Look at Harry. Harry's the one with the drug problem. I'm just the guy that's trying to soldier on. What parent would do that? That is so wild and crazy. That is just beyond the beyonds the beyond. But it's that crazy campaign spin doctor again. It's like, what wild world are you living in, Harry? What wild world are you living in? Maybe don't act in ways that anybody has to cover for your ass. What about that wild concept? Anyway, so he says that he went back to Eton, and you guys, I shouldn't laugh at this person. This person is having problems. But I read this and I laughed just like when I laughed that he said the fox. He felt the closest to the fox. He says he goes back to Eton. He's trying to do his schoolwork, trying to remain calm. I mean, the whole world's melting down around him because that campaign spin doctor's over there throwing stories to the press. He said, I listened over and over to my go-to soothing CD. Sounds of Okavango. 40 tracks. Crickets. Baboons. Rainstorm, thunderbirds, lions, and hyenas scrapping over a kill. This is what he would fall asleep to? It was the only way I could sleep. But why? Is it a joke that he'd fall asleep to hyenas scrapping over a kill? Isn't that what he wants us to believe his whole life is? Anyway, just give me a break. I had to go to sleep to the sounds of Africa. It's the only way I could sleep at night. He tells us that the story comes out and he's devastated. Devastated by all the lies that are coming out, and that his dad didn't even try to stand up for him. And he is embarrassed and he's shocked. And look, okay, full disclosure, like, I have a minuscule amount of pity for him in the sense that there probably was a lot of false, there was probably a lot of false color that was added to this story. For sure. I mean, I'm positive. It's a tabloid. Of course they were adding in all kinds of spicy details they thought would make the readers more interested in what they had to say. And that's terrible journalism. I agree with that. But the nub of the matter is this. Harry has acted in ways that made it easy to write a story about him. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. And it isn't because he was despair. It's because the heir wasn't acting in a way that was worthy of a story. Had William been acting in the same way, you better believe that the press would have jumped on that. What's more exciting? That's way more exciting. The future king of England is acting like a fool rather than his little brother who, you know, quite frankly, his whole life is just going to be one party after another. So what difference does it honestly make what he does? If Harry had acted above reproach, what could they have possibly said about him? But he wants to act foolishly and then he wants to be angry about it. Anyway, the story comes out. And he says that more than being embarrassed about it, he felt heartbroken at the idea that this had been partly the work of my own family. My own father, my future stepmother. They'd abetted this nonsense. And for what? To make their own lives a little bit easier? Yeah, apparently that's the people you come from. This horrible, rabid crowd of vicious and vindictive individuals who are just grabbing at your collar and throwing you down into the pits of hell at every turn of the way. Come on. He says he talked to Willie about it, and Willie's like, raw deal, Harold. And he says that sometimes William was even more angry about it than he was because he had been privy to some of the details that the campaign spin doctor had been doing in these backroom dealings, and William knew a little bit more about it, and, you know, he thought it was pretty shady and quite frankly, pretty bad. But again, is this the behavior of an arch nemesis? This person is on your side. This person is over here saying, yeah, this is really unfair. I'm sorry that they're doing this to you. I wish they hadn't, you know, and being angry for you and being on your side about it. Harry, get out of here with your business about my arch nemesis always was trying to drag me down. If this was your arch nemesis, then he would have been with Pa being like egging him on. Anyway, oh, you guys, again, I don't understand where the editor was. I don't understand why nobody stopped this man from so many passages. And this is like Exhibit A. When I come to you and say this book is terribly written and where was the editor? I mean, okay, sit down, okay? Because you're going to fall out if you're standing when you hear this. He says that he phoned Marco and he offered sympathy and he was sorry about him. And I asked him to remind me, what was the editor's name? He said it and I committed it to memory. But in the years since, I've avoided speaking it and I don't wish to repeat it here. Spare the reader, but also myself. Besides, can it possibly be a coincidence that the name of the woman who pretended I went to a rehab is a perfect anagram for rehabber kooks? Is the universe not saying something there? Who am I not to listen? That has just reached levels of lameness I did not believe he could ascend. So now throughout the book, he refers to this woman as rehabber kooks. Her real name is Rebecca Brooks. Is that not like so embarrassingly lame that he just said that? Just call the woman by her name. You just called her a pustule on the arse of humanity. Okay, God forbid you use the woman's real name. And it's like, to present it that way is just so immature. I do not even possess the vocabulary with which to describe how dumb that is. I don't understand. I don't understand. I have maxed out on my ability to understand this man. So, rehabber kooks. Oh, isn't that so clever that I figured out that anagram? Isn't that really funny that I call her rehabber kooks? About as funny as putting Tabasco in somebody's pudding, Harry. You really need a new sense of humor. He said life was just impossible after the story came out, and that it's all anybody could talk about, and it's all anybody wanted to, it was just like all these newspapers were feeding off of that, and it was just this big feeding frenzy, and he was at the heart of it, and that no one would give him a break. And even they had a family friend who came by, and he says, around this time, one of Pa's dearest friends came to Highgrove. She was with her husband, and the first thing the lady asked was, where's Club H? I tried to show her around the gardens, tried to show her Pa's lavender. Did she care about that? No, all she wanted to know about was all my sordid life and all the details, and if they were true or not. And she asked to see Club H, and I took her down to the place where we used to hang out, and then she said that it smelled like weed. But it didn't smell like weed, it smelled like dirt. So I don't know what she was talking about. It was a real organic smell. And she was trying to tell you it smelled like weed. Well, so is weed, so is it possible that she also could smell that? No, it was the dirt she smelled. It was the dirt. And we're going to end it with this last little story. It is the Golden Jubilee. They're planning for it. The entire country is just swept up in the fun and the jubilation of a celebration. And they can't wait for the final day, and everything is decked out and draped out in the Union Jack. And it's just this really exciting and thrilling time. But trouble has come knocking once again in the form of drug accusations. And again, it's like, Harry, I'm going to tell you this for the last time. If you don't want people to say that you're doing drugs, don't do drugs. He says that somebody is now coming to him. Marco's come to him again and said, all right, we got more problems. This time they're saying you're using cocaine. Harry's like, dang it, I'm not using cocaine. How dare you people keep saying I'm using cocaine and drugs and all this kind of stuff. Where does outlandish, ridiculous nonsense come from? How dare they? Of course, I had been doing cocaine around this time. It's like, what is wrong with this guy? I mean, a whole page of complete and total indignation. How dare they? Except I was doing it. It's like, it's maddening. It's maddening. It's maddening to me that he can actually write about how frustrated this makes him. He says that Marco told him, look, there's a journalist who knows about this. Is it true? And Harry's like, I mean, like, they don't have like a picture of me or anything. It's like, I don't do that kind of stuff, okay? I don't do that kind of stuff. And Marco's like, all right, well, but this guy says that he won't run the story, but if you'll meet with him, because he wants to like have a little chat with you about like, that's not the way to do run your life. Harry's like, I can't meet with him because if I meet with him, that's like admitting that I did it and I didn't do it. So just tell him I'm not a drug addict. And so the guy's like, Marco says, okay, well, I'll go back and tell him. And the editor decides to retract the story. But then we've got this little bit of foreshadowing. He says, on the bright side, I'd played the game well. After I'd called the journalist's bluff, he went silent. As suspected, he had no photo. And when his con game didn't work, he slithered off. Or not quite. He slithered into Clarence's house and became very good friends with Camilla and Pa. So we can only imagine we'll be hearing from this guy, about this guy later on. And I've seen this journalist actually speak many times on various interviews. He seems quite pleasant. I have no idea where in the world Harry comes off talking like this about anybody.